Rejected bride becomes rancher's secret weapon. Wild West detective love story. What happens when a rejected mail-order bride with a dangerous secret meets a grieving rancher who desperately needs saving? Esperanza Delacroix thought she was running toward a new life in Montana, but she was actually running toward her destiny. This isn't just another Western romance. It's a story of mystery, justice, and two wounded hearts finding healing in each other's strength. If you love tales where strong women change everything, hit that subscribe button and let's uncover the truth together. The October wind cut through Silver Creek Station like a blade carrying whispers of winter and broken promises. Esperanza Delacroix pressed her leather satchel against her ribs, feeling the weight of Magnus Caldwell's letters. Inside 3 months of carefully crafted lies about wanting a sophisticated wife for his mercantile business. The afternoon train wheezed to a stop, belching steam and coal smoke into the crisp Montana air. Through the dissipating clouds, she spotted him immediately. Magnus Caldwell stood exactly where he'd promised near the station house, clutching a bouquet of store-bought roses like a shield. But his face when he saw her step down from the passenger car, sweet Mary and Joseph, that face told her everything she needed to know about her future in Silver Creek. The flowers dropped from nerveless fingers. Rose petals scattered across weathered planks like drops of blood. His pale eyes swept her olive skin, her dark hair gleaming with copper highlights, the strong bone structure that marked her mixed heritage clear as a brand. Miss Delacroix, his voice cracked on her surname like thin ice under pressure. Mr. Caldwell. Hope kept her chin high, though her stomach churned with familiar dread. 3 years as a Pinkerton detective in San Francisco had taught her to read faces, and Magnus Caldwell's face screamed rejection louder than a fire bell. "There's been a misunderstanding," he stammered, pulling out a handkerchief despite the cool air. "Your correspondence never mentioned. That is, I wasn't aware you were." "French-Mexican, both," Hope supplied, quietly, her voice carrying just enough steel to make him flinch. "Does it matter, Mr. Caldwell? I can read, write, keep books, and manage a household. Isn't that what you advertise for?" His silence stretched like a noose. Around them, the platform buzzed with afternoon travelers, cowboys heading home, families chasing Western dreams, everyone with somewhere to belong. Everyone except Hope, standing with her carpetbag and shattered expectations, while a man who'd written passionate letters about building a life together looked at her like she carried plague. "I can't," Magnus said finally, his merchant's voice calculating even in rejection. "My customers, my standing in the community. People wouldn't understand." "Understand what a man keeping his word." Red crept up his pale neck. "I'll pay your return fare naturally, in compensation for the inconvenience." He pressed silver coins into her palm, metal warm from his sweaty grip. The weight felt heavier than all her broken dreams combined. "Keep your money." Hope let the coins fall, ringing against the platform like funeral bells. "I wouldn't want to further inconvenience your delicate conscience." Whispers rose around them like smoke. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the scent of drama, better than any dime novel. She caught fragments floating on the wind. Mail-order bride, turned her away. Poor girl, disgraceful. Hope straightened her spine. She'd survived a drunk father who disappeared when she was 12. She'd endured working the San Francisco docks before the Pinkertons recruited her. She'd infiltrated gambling dens and uncovered land fraud schemes that could have gotten her killed. She wouldn't crumble because one coward couldn't see past heritage to worth. "Miss Delacroix," the voice came from directly behind her, deep, steady, carrying the authority of a man who'd never needed to raise it for attention. Hope turned to find herself looking up at the shoulders broad enough to block out the sun and eyes the color of winter storm clouds. He stood well over 6 feet, built like he'd been carved from the Rockies themselves. His hat shadowed angular features marked by hard living and harder choices, but she caught the firm set of his jaw, the small scar cutting white through his left eyebrow like lightning. "Cole Thornfield," he said, touching his hat brim with old-world courtesy. "Ironwood Ranch." Even in San Francisco's detective circles, she'd heard that name whispered with respect and wariness. Owned 15,000 acres, they said. Ran the finest cattle and horses in 3 territories. The kind of man who could buy Magnus's entire store and use it for kindling. But there was something else in those storm gray eyes. Pain carefully controlled, but unmistakable. This was a man who understood loss intimately. Mr. Thornfield, Hope inclined her head, grateful for any distraction from the gawking faces. Your reputation precedes you. Does it? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. Seems you find yourself in need of alternative arrangements, Miss Delacroix. Behind him, Magnus shifted like a nervous horse. Now see here, Thornfield. I have every right to... To what? Cole's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried like thunder rolling off mountain peaks. Abandon a woman at the station. Leave her stranded in a strange place with no resources. He stepped closer to Magnus, using his considerable height to devastating effect. That kind of behavior reflects poorly on all of us, Caldwell. Hope watched the exchange with professional fascination. This was power in its purest form, not shouting or threats, just the quiet certainty of a man who'd never doubted his own strength, because everyone could see it written in his bones. Miss Delacroix, Cole turned back to her, and she caught a flash of something calculating in those winter eyes. I'm looking for someone to teach the local children. The position pays fair wages, includes room and board, and lasts through spring with option to extend. Hope's detective instincts immediately started cataloging questions. Why was a successful rancher suddenly offering rescue to a stranger? What did he gain from this gesture, but her more practical side recognized opportunity when it knocked? What happened to your previous teacher? She asked. Never had one. Children around these parts make do with what learning they can scrape together from parents or traveling preachers. He paused, and something vulnerable flickered behind his controlled expression. Time they had better chances. The crowd's whispers had shifted tone, approval now mixed with surprise. Cole Thornfield was known as a hard man fair, but not given to charity. This unexpected kindness was apparently news worth spreading. And my qualifications? Hope asked, though she was already calculating how this position could serve her own hidden purposes. A teaching job would provide perfect cover while she decided her next move. Can you read and cipher, speak proper English? I speak 4 languages fluently, Hope said, letting controlled pride steady her voice. English, Spanish, French, and enough German to manage correspondence. I also have experience with bookkeeping legal documents, and she hesitated, then took a calculated risk. Investigative research. That last phrase made Cole's eyes sharpen with interest. Investigative research. I worked for a law firm in San Francisco, often had to research property records, track down witnesses, verify claims. All true as far as it went. She simply omitted that the law firm had been a cover for Pinkerton operations. Something shifted in Cole's expression, calculation giving way to what might have been recognition. The position is yours if you want it, Miss Delacroix. No obligations beyond what we agree to. Fair wages, fair treatment, and the respect you deserve. Behind him, Magnus sputtered indignantly. This is highly irregular, Thornfield. The woman has no references. No. References? Cole's voice could have frozen August. What references did you require when you advertised for a mail-order bride? What guarantees did you offer beyond pretty words and letters? Magnus wilted like week-old lettuce. Hope bit back a smile. Whatever Cole Thornfield's motives, watching him demolish Magnus's pretensions was deeply satisfying. I accept your offer, Mr. Thornfield, she said clearly, making sure the entire platform heard her. When do I start? Now if you're willing. Wagons this way. Cole moved to collect her carpet bag and small trunk, lifting them like they weighed nothing. When Magnus stepped forward with one last weak protest, Cole's stare could have cracked stone. I hope you understand, Caldwell, that word of this will spread. How you handle disappointment, how you treat people when they're vulnerable. His voice carried quiet menace. Small towns have long memories. They walked away without looking back, the crowd parting respectfully. Whatever else people thought of this strange turn of events, no one questioned Cole Thornfield's judgment twice, at least not to his face. He helped her onto a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 fine bay horses, his hands steady and warm even through her gloves. When he climbed up beside her, the springs barely noticed his weight despite his obvious size. Thank you, Hope said, as they rolled away from the station, past Magnus, still standing amid scattered rose petals. Though I have to ask why. Why what? Why help me? You don't know anything about me. Cole guided the horses through the main street, past businesses and frame houses that spoke of prosperity earned through grit and determination. Know enough. Takes backbone to stand straight when the world tilts sideways. Takes more to do it with dignity intact. They rode in comfortable silence as Silver Creek fell behind them. The road wound through grassland dotted with cattle following a creek lined with cottonwoods already touched by autumn gold. Mountains rose in the distance, peaks crowned with early snow that caught the afternoon light like scattered diamonds. It's beautiful, Hope said, meaning it. After 3 years breathing San Francisco's smog and coal smoke, the vast openness felt like salvation. Has its moments. Winters are brutal, though, long, cold, isolated. Some folks find the solitude drives them to madness. I'm not afraid of solitude. Sometimes it's preferable to poor company. That earned her a quick glance, something that might have been approval. What brought you west, besides Caldwell's letters? Hope considered how much truth to reveal. Her story had layers within layers, and she'd learned to parcel out information carefully. My mother died when I was 16. Cholera took her during a bad outbreak in Los Angeles. My father, he tried, but whiskey was his first love. After I lost him too, I needed work, and found it in San Francisco. I did. Good work, important work, but she paused, choosing words with a detective's precision. But 3 years of seeing how justice works differently, depending on your name, your color, your connections, it wears on the soul. When Magnus's letters arrived, marriage seemed like a chance for something different. Different how? A family, a place where I belonged instead of just worked. She smoothed her traveling dress, buying time to organize thoughts. Perhaps it was foolish to dream of such things. Nothing foolish about wanting to belong somewhere. Something in his tone, pain carefully controlled but unmistakable, made her study his profile. This was a man who understood loss at bone-deep levels. The ranch is another 2 hours, Cole said, changing the subject with obvious intent. You'll have your own room in the main house. Meals with me and my foreman Miguel unless you prefer separate arrangements. The children come from scattered homesteads, so you'll need to organize lessons around their work schedules. How many children? 12, ranging from 5 to 15. Some can barely recognize letters. Others are sharp as new blades but never had proper schooling. Hope nodded, her mind already organizing curricula and schedules. I'll need supplies, books, slates, paper, proper writing implements. Make a list. Miguel goes to town Saturdays for supplies. And you, what should I know about working for Cole Thornfield? Cole was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, I keep my word, pay fair wages, expect honest work in return. Don't ask about the locked room upstairs, don't interfere with ranch business, and we'll manage fine together. The locked room. Hope filed that information in her detective's memory. Every house held secrets, but some secrets festered if left hidden too long. Still, she'd learned not to go hunting mysteries unless they threatened her directly. Seems reasonable enough. They crested a hill, and Ironwood Ranch spread below them like something from a dream. Hope's breath caught despite her professional composure. The main house rose 2 stories of solid timber and native stone, with a wraparound porch that spoke of comfort and permanence. Outbuildings dotted the landscape in organized efficiency, barn, bunkhouse, smithy, storage sheds. Everything reflected prosperity earned through intelligence and determination. How long have you lived here? She asked. Built it 10 years ago, started with nothing but a land claim and stubborn refusal to fail. And now I run 5,000 head of cattle breed, some of the finest horses in Montana territory, and employ 30 good men year-round. Pride colored his voice, but it was earned pride built on sweat and sacrifice. Not bad for a man who started with empty pockets and borrowed tools. They rolled through the ranch gate under an iron arch bearing the Ironwood brand, a stylized tree with deep roots and spreading branches. Dogs ran out barking, welcomes, tails beating joyous rhythm. Cowboys emerged from various buildings to see who'd arrived, faces curious but respectful. Cole pulled up at the main house. Miguel, he called. A weathered man with kind eyes and graying temples emerged from the barn. Hope guessed him around 50, with the easy competence of someone who'd spent decades reading horses and weather with equal skill. Miguel Santos, Cole said as the man approached. My foreman and the closest thing to family, I claim. Miguel, this is Miss Esperanza Delacroix. She'll be teaching the children. Miguel's weathered face lit up when Cole pronounced her full name in perfect Spanish. Bienvenida, señorita Esperanza, he said warmly. It will be good to have someone who understands our ways in this house again. Gracias, Hope replied, touched by genuine welcome. I look forward to working with you, Señor Santos. Miguel will show you around, Cole said, lifting her belongings with easy strength. I'll take these to your room. The house's interior was well built, but clearly lacking a woman's touch. Good furniture arranged for function over beauty, clean but somehow sterile like a house afraid to feel homey. The kitchen was spacious and well-equipped, the parlor comfortable but impersonal. Senor Cole, he is good man, Miguel said quietly as they toured the ground floor. But sad you understand, since the tragedy he keeps everyone at distance. Tragedy? Hope asked, though her detective instincts had already cataloged the signs, carefully controlled grief walls, built against further pain, a house that felt frozen in time. Miguel's face clouded with memory. His wife and little daughter. The fever took them last winter. Very bad time for everyone, but especially for him. Understanding crashed over Hope like cold mountain water. The locked room wasn't just storage, it was a shrine. That explained Cole's careful distance, the walls he'd built around whatever heart remained to him. I see, she said softly, filing this crucial information. How old was the child? Elena, 7 years old, bright as summer lightning, curious about everything. Miguel's voice roughened with grief. After Maria and Elena died, Senor Cole, he blamed himself. Works too much, sleeps too little, pushes away anyone who tries to help. They climbed stairs to the second floor. Hope's room faced east toward the mountains, spacious and clean, with windows that would catch morning light. Someone had left fresh towels and a basin of water on the washstand. The locked room, she asked quietly. Miguel pointed to a door at the hallway's far end. Even from here, Hope could see the heavy padlock securing it like a promise of pain. Elena's room. He goes there sometimes at night, just sits by her bed holding her favorite book. Hope's professionally trained heart recognized the signs of complicated grief. Love turned to guilt. Sorrow transformed into self-punishment. She'd seen it before in her detective work, usually in cases involving family tragedy. And his wife? Maria was delicate, beautiful like flower, but fragile. The frontier was hard for her, the isolation, the constant work, the dangers. When Elena died, Miguel shrugged helplessly. She stopped fighting. Doctor said her heart gave out, but we knew better. She died of heartbreak. See, left Senor Cole alone with guilt that grows like cancer in his soul. He thinks if he'd been better husband, better father, better provider. Miguel's weathered hands spread in universal gesture of helplessness. Grief makes even strong men foolish sometimes. Hope unpacked methodically, processing this information with detective's precision. She'd accepted a position teaching children, but apparently she'd also walked into a house haunted by loss and guilt. No wonder Cole had warned her about the locked room. But there was something else tickling her instincts, something that didn't quite fit. A successful rancher's wife and child dying of fever wasn't unusual. Frontier medicine was primitive and diseases struck randomly. But Hope had learned to trust her intuition, and something about this tragedy felt orchestrated. Dinner was served in the kitchen, informal but hearty. Beef stew with fresh bread, green beans from the garden apple pie that Miguel's late wife Rosa had taught him to make. The food was excellent, the company pleasant enough, but Hope found herself studying Cole when she thought he wasn't looking. He asked polite questions about her journey, her previous work, her plans for organizing lessons. Professional conversation that kept careful distance from anything personal. But she caught him watching her too, assessing with winter gray eyes that missed nothing. I'll need to visit the neighboring families, Hope said over coffee. Meet the children, understand their current education levels, discuss schedules with parents. Miguel can escort you tomorrow. Make proper introductions. Thank you. Hope hesitated, then took calculated risk. Mr. Thornfield, may I ask what made you decide the children needed formal schooling? Something shifted in his expression. Pain flickering behind careful control. Young Billy Santos, 10 years old, smart as whip crack, but can't read his own name. His parents are good people, but they never learned letters either. Boy deserves better than marking documents with X for rest of his life. There's more to it than that, Hope observed gently. Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Elena was just learning to read when he stopped, shook his head sharply. Every child deserves that chance. To discover books, to understand worlds beyond what they can see from their doorsteps. You were teaching her yourself. Maria was. French stories, mostly fairy tales about princesses and magical kingdoms. Elena loved the music of that language, even when she didn't understand every word. His voice grew rough with memory. She'd sit on Maria's lap after supper, following along with tiny finger, while Maria read about faraway places. Hope's throat tightened with sympathetic pain. This wasn't just about education, this was about honoring dead child's memory, giving other children opportunities Elena would never have. I'll do everything possible to help them learn, she promised quietly. All of them. Cole nodded once sharp and final. I'll say good night then. Breakfast at dawn. Miguel will show you around tomorrow before you start visiting families. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against floor, like punctuation. Hope watched him go, noting the rigid set of shoulders, the measured pace of man, carrying invisible weight up those stairs. Later, lying in her comfortable bed, listening to the ranch settle around her, Hope reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. This morning, she'd been a rejected mail-order bride with nowhere to go. Tonight, she was a teacher in a house shadowed by grief, employed by the man who built fortress walls around its heart. But somehow, despite the sadness hanging over Ironwood Ranch like morning mist, Hope felt more optimistic than she had in months. Here was work that mattered, purpose beyond mere survival. And maybe if she was careful and patient, she could help heal some wounds that kept Cole Thornfield trapped in his pain. Through thin walls, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, measured stopping outside the locked room. The soft click of key turning. Then silence that seemed to echo with unspoken grief. Hope closed her eyes and said a prayer for the man sitting alone in his dead daughter's room, keeping vigil over dreams that would never wake. Tomorrow she would begin teaching Silver Creek's children. Tonight she would dream of little girls who loved French fairy tales and fathers who read to them. Some gifts once lost could never be recovered, but new gifts could grow in their place if hearts proved brave enough to plant them. Outside her window, the Montana wind sang through autumn grass, carrying promises as vast as the star-scattered sky overhead. But as Hope drifted toward sleep, her detective's mind wouldn't quite settle. Something about Elena and Maria's deaths nagged at her professional instincts, a pattern she couldn't yet name, a wrongness that hid beneath surface tragedy. Tomorrow she would focus on the children, on building trust and establishing routines. But eventually she would need to understand exactly what had happened in this house last winter. Because Hope Delacroix had learned that some tragedies weren't accidents at all. They were carefully orchestrated murders disguised as natural deaths. And if someone had killed Cole's family, they might not be finished with their deadly work. 3 weeks into her teaching duties, Hope had established rhythms that felt as natural as breathing. Mornings at the kitchen table with whichever children could manage lessons before farm chores called them away. Afternoons visiting scattered homesteads carrying books and hope to families who'd never imagined their children might read Shakespeare or solve mathematics beyond counting cattle. But beneath the comfortable routines, tension built like storm clouds gathering behind mountain peaks. Hope's detective instincts, honed by 3 years with the Pinkertons, had been cataloging inconsistencies since her first night at Ironwood Ranch. Small things that individually meant nothing but together painted a picture that made her professional paranoia itch like wool underwear. The medicine cabinet in Cole's study locked tighter than a bank vault. Miguel's nervous glances whenever anyone mentioned the details of Maria and Elena's final illness. The way conversations stopped when she entered rooms too quietly. And most telling of all, the complete absence of medical records or doctor's notes about the fever that had supposedly claimed 2 lives. Senorita Hope, young Carmen Martinez, whispered during morning lessons, her dark eyes wide with the kind of worry that shouldn't mark a 7-year-old's face. Papa says I shouldn't ask questions about the senora and the little girl. Says it makes Senor Cole too sad. Your papa is wise, Hope replied gently, though her detective's mind filed away another piece of the puzzle. But Carmen, do you remember anything about when they were sick? Anything at all? Carmen glanced around the kitchen as if checking for listeners. They weren't sick, like fever sick, she whispered. They were different sick. Senora Maria, she had the shaking hands and couldn't eat. Elena, she was always tired, always sleeping. Miguel's Rosa, she said it looked like what, sweetheart? Like poison sickness. But Rosa, she died too right after she said that. Same kind of tired sickness. Ice crystallized in Hope's veins. Rosa Santos, Miguel's wife, the ranch's unofficial healer, had recognized symptoms of poisoning and died shortly after voicing suspicions. 3 deaths in the space of 2 months, all involving women who might have noticed something wrong. That evening, Hope found Miguel in the barn brushing down Cole's favorite stallion with the meticulous care of a man seeking distraction from troubled thoughts. "Miguel," she said quietly, "may I ask you something about your Rosa?" His hands stilled on the brush. "What about me Rosa? How did she die? The exact symptoms, I mean." Miguel's weathered face aged a decade in the lamplight. "Why do you ask such things, señorita?" "Because I think Rosa knew something important, something that might have gotten her killed." The words hung between them like smoke from a guttering candle. Miguel set down the brush with shaking hands. "You are a dangerous woman," he said finally. "Too smart, too observant, like Rosa was. Tell me what Rosa suspected." She thought. Miguel glanced toward the house where Cole was reviewing accounts in his study. She thought the Senora and Elena were being poisoned, slowly, carefully over many weeks. Rosa, she knew herbs knew sickness, said their symptoms weren't from fever. And then Rosa died. 3 days after she told me her suspicions. Same symptoms, weakness, stomach pain, the terrible tiredness that no sleep could cure. Miguel's voice dropped to barely audible whisper. I should have listened, should have protected her. Hope's detective training kicked into full operation. Who had access to the house during that time? Who could have been administering poison without detection? Anyone, really. We had many visitors during the illness, doctor from town, neighbors bringing food, family. Miguel's eyes widened with sudden understanding. Family. Dios mío, you think it was family. Before Hope could respond, hoofbeats thundered into the ranch yard. Through the barn's open doors, they watched a group of riders approach under the cover of early darkness. Even in the dim light, their hostile intent was unmistakable. Garrett Thornfield, Miguel breathed. Cole's older brother, El Diablo himself. Hope had heard Cole mention his brother exactly once, a bitter comment about family obligations that couldn't be escaped. Now watching the lead rider dismount with Predator's grace, she understood why Cole's voice had carried such venom. Garrett Thornfield possessed the same basic bone structure as his brother, but where Cole radiated strength tempered by honor, Garrett embodied power corrupted by cruelty. Handsome in a cold way, expensively dressed, surrounded by men who looked like hired killers rather than cowboys. Stay here, Hope told Miguel, but if shooting starts, ride for the sheriff in town. She slipped from the barn and made her way closer to the house, detective instincts demanding intelligence about this unexpected visit. Hidden in shadow near the kitchen window, she could hear every word exchanged on the front porch. Brother dear, Garrett's voice carried poisonous affection. Still playing gentleman rancher, I see. Garrett. Cole's tone could have frozen August. What brings you to my property uninvited? Our property, technically. Father's will was quite specific about shared inheritance until certain conditions are met. Garrett's laugh held no warmth. Speaking of which, time grows short, doesn't it? How many months left to fulfill those pesky marriage and heir requirements? 15 months, more than enough time. Is it? With poor Maria gone and that tragic business with little Elena. Garrett shook his head in mock sympathy. Such a terrible loss, though some might say it was divine judgment for a man who abandoned his dying parents to chase California gold. Hope saw Cole's hands clench into fists. Whatever poison Garrett was spreading, it cut deep. Careful, brother. Oh, but it's true, isn't it? You left me to tend at our aging parents while you sought fortune in the goldfields. Selfish boy, thinking only of yourself. I sent money home every month for 12 years. Did you? Garrett's smile was sharp as a blade. Funny thing about that money, Cole. Mother and father never saw a penny. Died practically destitute while their younger son lived like a king in California. Even through the window, Hope could see Cole's shock. Whatever cruel game Garrett was playing, this revelation was devastating news. That's impossible. I have bank records, receipts. Do you then, by all means, produce them? Show me documentation of all those loving remittances." Garrett leaned forward like a snake preparing to strike. "You can't because they never existed. You invented that story to ease your guilty conscience after our parents died believing their son had forgotten them." Hope's detective mind immediately cataloged the obvious explanation: someone had intercepted Cole's money for 12 years. Someone with access to mail banking connections in absolute ruthlessness. Someone like Garrett himself. "But let's discuss more pressing matters," Garrett continued. "This school teacher you've hired, Esperanza Delacroix, formerly of San Francisco. Interesting background for a simple educator." Ice crystallized in Hope's stomach. How did Garrett know her real name? How much did he know about her past? "Miss Delacroix's qualifications are excellent," Cole replied carefully. "Oh, I'm sure they are. Former Pinkerton detective specializing in fraud investigation and document analysis. Quite the coincidence, hiring someone with such specific skills." Hope's blood turned to winter water. Garrett not only knew about her detective background, he was threatening to expose it. But how the Pinkertons had guaranteed her cover identity when she'd left San Francisco under less than ideal circumstances. "I don't know what you're implying, Garrett. Don't you, a grieving widower, suddenly hires a beautiful woman with investigative experience? Some might wonder what secrets she's been employed to uncover. Miss Delacroix is here to teach children, nothing more. She, then you won't mind if I have a private conversation with your pretty school teacher, just to ensure she understands the delicate nature of her position here." "Like hell." Cole's voice dropped to deadly quiet. "You'll stay away from Miss Delacroix and you'll get off my land now." Garrett's laughter echoed off the mountains like mockery itself. "Your land, brother dear. You seem to forget the conditions of father's inheritance. 15 months to produce a wife and heir or everything reverts to me. And given your tragic luck with was." He shrugged eloquently. "Perhaps Miss Delacroix should understand exactly what she's walking into if she becomes too attached to this place." They rode away in swirl of dust and implied threats, leaving Cole standing alone on the porch. Hope waited until the hoofbeats faded before emerging from shadow. She found Cole still outside, staring into darkness, with expression of a man watching his world crumble around him. "Cole," he turned, and she saw devastation in those winter gray eyes. "How much did you hear?" "Enough. He knows about my background." "Your background." Hope made a decision that could change everything. "I wasn't entirely truthful about my work in San Francisco. I didn't just research documents for lawyers. I was a Pinkerton detective specializing in fraud and murder cases." Cole studied her face in the moonlight. "And now I'm a school teacher who's beginning to suspect your family didn't die of natural causes." The words hung between them like gunpowder waiting for a spark. Cole's expression cycled through shock denial and finally grim acceptance. "You think they were murdered?" "I think someone poisoned them slowly, carefully over several months. Someone who wanted their deaths to look like fever." Hope stepped closer, voice gentle but determined. "Cole, I think that someone was Garrett." "That's—" He stopped, ran agitated hands through his hair. "Christ almighty, if that's true, then Rosa Santos died because she figured it out. And if Garrett knows I'm investigating, we're all in danger." Cole was quiet for so long, Hope wondered if shock had frozen his ability to process information. "Finally, why would you tell me this? Why risk exposing yourself?" "Because someone needs to stand up to men like Garrett. Because those children deserve better than having their school destroyed by greed and murder." She paused, then added quietly, "And because you deserve to know the truth about what happened to your family. Even if the truth destroys what's left of my sanity, the guilt is already destroying you. At least the truth offers hope for justice." Cole looked toward the house, toward the locked room where he kept vigil over grief and self-recrimination. "If Garrett killed them, if I failed to protect them from my own brother, then you stop him from hurting anyone else. You make sure Maria and Elena and Rosa get the justice they deserve. How Garrett's too smart to leave obvious evidence, too well connected to face consequences even if we found proof." Hope smiled, and for the first time in months, it was the predatory smile of a hunter who'd found her quarry's trail. Mr. Thornfield, you're forgetting what I used to do for a living. Finding evidence that smart criminals think they've hidden, that's exactly what Pinkerton detectives do best. And if he tries to hurt you for investigating, then he'll discover that this school teacher knows how to take care of herself. That night, Hope lay awake cataloging what she knew and planning her investigation. Garrett had motive inheriting a valuable ranch. He'd had opportunity family access during the illness. And if he'd been intercepting Cole's money for 12 years, he certainly possessed the ruthlessness required for murder. But proving it would require evidence, and evidence meant getting close enough to Garrett to gather intelligence. Dangerous work even for an experienced detective. Through the wall, she heard Cole's restless footsteps in the hallway. But tonight, instead of the soft click of Elena's door opening, his steps stopped outside Hope's room. Hope, his voice was barely audible through the wood. Are you awake? Yes. Thank you for telling me the truth, for giving me something to fight for besides guilt. Cole, tomorrow we start fighting back. The next morning brought new purpose to Ironwood Ranch. Over breakfast, Hope outlined her investigation plan, while Miguel listened with growing excitement and Cole absorbed details with grim determination. First, we need to establish exactly what poison was used, Hope said, spreading notes across the kitchen table. Miguel, do you still have any of Rosa's herbal remedies? Anything she might have tested for toxins? See, she kept careful records of all her treatments, but they are hidden. Rosa feared someone might destroy them. Good. We'll need those records. Next, we need access to Garrett's financial records. If he's been stealing money for 12 years, there will be traces. Banks keep documentation. How do we get access to bank records? Cole asked. Hope's smile was sharp as winter wind. Leave that to me. Pinkerton training includes certain creative approaches to information gathering. But even as they planned, Hope's instincts warned her that time was running short. Garrett knew she was here, knew her background, knew she posed a threat to whatever long-term plans he'd been constructing. He wouldn't wait passively for her to gather evidence against him. The attack came 3 days later, just as Hope was returning from afternoon lessons at the Patterson homestead. She was driving the small cart Cole had provided for her teaching rounds when riders emerged from the cottonwoods lining Silver Creek. 6 men's faces hidden by bandanas, rifles glinting in afternoon sunlight. Not random bandits, their positioning and timing spoke of careful planning. Miss Delacroix, the leader, called, his voice muffled, but somehow familiar. Step down from the cart, please. Slowly. Hope's hand moved instinctively toward the derringer hidden in her skirt pocket, a habit from her Pinkerton days. But 6 rifles against 1 small pistol offered poor odds. What do you want? She called back, buying time to assess escape routes. Just a friendly conversation about your future employment prospects. Seems your current position might be hazardous to your health. I'm quite happy with my current position, thank you. Are you even knowing what happened to the last woman who asked too many questions around here? Rosa. They were talking about Rosa Santos confirming Hope's suspicions about the healer's death. I don't know what you mean. The leader urged his horse closer, and Hope caught a glimpse of pale eyes above the bandana. Eyes that looked disturbingly familiar. Miss Delacroix, you have a choice. Leave Silver Creek tonight, never return, never speak of what you think you've discovered. Or, he gestured to his armed companions, well, frontier life is dangerous. Accidents happen to people who don't understand their place. And if I refuse, then you'll join Rosa Santos and the others who couldn't mind their own business. The confirmation that Rosa had been murdered sent rage shooting through Hope's veins like fire. These men, Garrett's men, had killed a gentle healer whose only crime was caring enough to notice poison symptoms. I need time to consider, Hope said, mind racing through options. You have until sunset. After that, the leader shrugged eloquently. Accidents become inevitable. They rode away as suddenly as they'd appeared, leaving Hope alone with racing pulse and crystalline certainty. Garrett wasn't just threatening her, he was preparing to eliminate anyone who might interfere with his plans for Ironwood Ranch. But Hope Delacroix hadn't survived 3 years as a Pinkerton detective by backing down from dangerous men. If Garrett wanted a war, she'd give him one he'd never forget. Tonight, the real investigation would begin. Hope returned to Ironwood Ranch that evening with mind racing and plans crystallizing like frost on window glass. Garrett's ultimatum had revealed more than he'd intended, not just his willingness to commit murder, but his desperation. Men who felt secure in their power didn't resort to clumsy threats delivered by masked riders. They waited patiently for legal victory. No, Garrett was afraid of what she might discover, afraid his carefully constructed plans were unraveling, which meant she was closer to the truth than even she'd realized. She found Cole and Miguel in the study poring over ranch accounts by lamplight. Both men looked up sharply when she entered, and Cole's face went hard as granite when he saw her expression. "What happened?" he demanded. Hope related the afternoon's encounter, watching Cole's jaw tighten with each detail. When she finished, silence stretched between them like a loaded gun. "You're leaving," Cole said flatly. "Tonight. Miguel will escort you to the train station and—" "I'm not going anywhere," Hope interrupted, steel in her voice. "Mr. Thornfield, with respect, I've been threatened by far more dangerous men than your brother. I didn't survive 3 years with the Pinkertons by running at the first sign of trouble. This isn't San Francisco. Out here, Garrett can make people disappear without consequence." "Can he? Then why hasn't he simply killed you and claimed the ranch through force?" Cole's expression shifted as he processed her logic. Because, because the will specifies legal inheritance. If I die before fulfilling the marriage requirement, the ranch goes to territorial court, not automatically to Garrett. Exactly. He needs you alive but unmarried for 15 more months, which means he can't risk obvious violence against you. Hope leaned forward, urgency driving her words. But he can eliminate threats like me, like Rosa, like anyone who might help you succeed. Miguel had been listening with growing excitement. "Senorita, you have a plan." "I have several plans, but first we need evidence of the poisoning. Miguel, where did Rosa hide her treatment records?" "In the old root cellar behind our cabin. Rosa, she sealed them in oilcloth, buried them beneath the turnip bins." "Good. We'll need those tonight." "And Cole, I need you to think carefully about the weeks before Maria and Elena became ill. Who visited regularly, who had access to food, medicine, anything they might have consumed?" Cole's face went pale as memory worked through possibilities. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. The medicine. Garrett brought special tonic from Denver, said it would help with Elena's cough. Maria took it religiously for weeks before she started showing symptoms. Yes, and Elena loved the taste, peppermint-flavored, sweet as candy. She begged for extra doses. Cole's hands clenched into fists. "I helped him poison my own family." "No," Hope said firmly. "You trusted someone you should have been able to trust. The guilt belongs to Garrett, not you. But if I hadn't been so focused on ranch business, if I'd paid more attention, you would have ended up poisoned too, and Garrett would have inherited immediately." Hope touched his arm gently. "Cole survivor's guilt is natural, but it's not productive. Channel that energy into getting justice for Maria and Elena." Miguel cleared his throat. "Senorita, if we are going to the root cellar, we should go now. Garrett's men will be watching for you to leave tonight." Hope smiled grimly. "Let them watch the roads. We're not taking roads." An hour later, dressed in dark clothing and moving like shadows, Hope and Miguel made their way across open range toward the foreman's cabin. Cole had wanted to come, but Hope convinced him to stay behind. If this was a trap, Ironwood Ranch needed its owner alive and free. The root cellar was exactly as Miguel had described, a small, earth-sheltered storage space behind his modest cabin. Rosa had chosen her hiding spot well beneath turnip bins that looked undisturbed, wrapped in oilcloth that had protected the documents from moisture and decay. Hope's hands trembled as she unwrapped Rosa's careful notes by lantern light. The healer had documented everything: symptom progression, attempted treatments, and most crucially, her growing suspicions about poison. "Look at this," Hope whispered, pointing to Rosa's neat script. She identified the specific symptoms: gradual weakness, digestive problems, hair loss, skin discoloration. And here she suspected arsenic administered in small doses over extended periods. "Arsenic," Miguel breathed, "the same symptoms Rosa showed before she died." "More than that, look at these dates." Hope's detective training allowed her to spot patterns others missed. Rosa documented every visitor to the main house during the illness period. Garrett came twice weekly, always bringing something: food, medicine, small gifts for Elena. They found more damning evidence in Rosa's notes observations about the Denver tonic's unusual aftertaste, Elena's worsening symptoms correlating directly with increased doses, Maria's decline accelerating after Garrett convinced her the medicine was working. We have motive and method, Hope murmured, organizing documents. But we need physical evidence, something that proves the tonic contained arsenic. The medicine bottles, Miguel said suddenly. Maria, she saved everything Elena used, said she wanted to remember every moment of her daughter's life. The bottles might still be in the locked room. Hope's pulse quickened. Cole would never allow us to disturb Elena's room. He might if he understood what we could prove. They returned to the ranch house to find Cole pacing the kitchen like a caged wolf. He looked up sharply when they entered, and Hope saw Hope warring with dread in his expression. What did you find? Hope spread Rosa's documentation across the kitchen table, watching Cole's face as she explained each piece of evidence. When she finished, he sat heavily in his chair, looking older than his 32 years. The medicine bottles, he said quietly. You need the medicine bottles. Cole, we don't have to. Yes, we do. He stood abruptly, jaw set with new determination. If those bottles can prove Garrett murdered my family, then Elena and Maria deserve justice more than I deserve the luxury of preserved grief. The locked room felt like stepping into a shrine. Elena's toys arranged exactly as she'd left them. Maria's sewing basket beside the chair where she'd read French fairy tales, everything preserved in heartbreaking detail. But it was the small table beside Elena's bed that held their salvation, 3 amber bottles, still containing remnants of the peppermint-flavored tonic that had slowly stolen a little girl's life. We'll need to test these, Hope said, carefully collecting the bottles. I know someone in Denver who can perform chemical analysis. How long will that take? Cole asked. A week, maybe 2, but Cole, we can't wait passively for results. Garrett knows I'm investigating now. He'll accelerate whatever timeline he's been following. What do you mean? Hope had been thinking about timing, about Garrett's desperation, about the marriage requirement that hung over Cole like a sword. I think Garrett's planning something for us soon. Maybe another accident, maybe a legal challenge to your ownership. We need to force his hand before he's ready. How? Hope took a deep breath, knowing her next words would change everything between them. By announcing our engagement. The silence in Elena's room was deafening. Cole stared at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. Our what? Engagement. Marriage. The one thing that would permanently ruin Garrett's inheritance plans. Hope kept her voice steady despite her racing pulse. It's the logical solution, Cole. You need a wife to fulfill your father's will. I need protection from Garrett's threats. We work well together, respect each other. Hope you can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. Think about it logically. We already live in the same house, collaborate effectively, enjoy each other's company. Marriage would simply make it official. Cole ran agitated hands through his hair. You don't understand what you're suggesting. The isolation, the danger, the certainty that everyone I care about gets hurt. I understand perfectly. You're so convinced you're cursed that you'd rather surrender to Garrett than risk caring about someone again. Hope stepped closer, voice gentle but determined. But Cole, I've already been hurt. My parents died young. I was abandoned by a man who promised to love me. I've been shot at by criminals and threatened by murderers. I'm not some delicate flower who'll wilt at the first sign of hardship. This isn't about hardship. It's about me being responsible for another person's happiness, another person's safety. You're already responsible for dozens of people's happiness. Your ranch hands their families the children you're educating. One more person won't break you. Cole turned away, staring at Elena's collection of fairy tale books. If something happened to you because of me, then it would be my choice to take that risk. Just like it was Maria's choice to marry you, Rosa's choice to speak up about the poisoning. Hope moved to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Cole, you can't protect people by pushing them away. You can only protect them by standing with them when danger comes. Is that what you're offering, to stand with me? For as long as you'll let me, through whatever comes. Outside Elena's window, an owl called through the darkness. Wind whispered through autumn leaves, carrying scents of approaching winter and the eternal promise of seasons turning toward spring. If we did this, Cole said slowly, It would have to be clear between us. No expectations beyond what we've agreed to. No obligations for intimacy unless we both choose it freely. Understood. And if you ever want to leave, want to find real love with someone else, I won't hold you to promises made under duress. Hope's heart clenched at his assumption that their marriage couldn't involve real love. But she pushed the pain aside. This was about justice and survival, not romance. The same courtesy would extend to you, she managed. Then, Cole drew a shaky breath. Then I accept your proposal, Miss Delacroix. God help us both. They shook hands on it, formal as any business contract. But when their skin touched, Hope felt electricity race up her arm like lightning. Cole must have felt it too because he released her hand, quickly stepping back to safer distance. We should plan this carefully, Hope said, forcing practical thoughts. Garrett will be suspicious of any sudden engagement. We need to make it look like natural development. How long do we have? Based on his desperation tonight? Not long. I'd say we have a week, maybe two, before he tries something drastic. They spent the next hour planning their strategy, a whirlwind courtship that would convince the community while protecting both their reputations. Church attendance together, public dinners, small gestures designed to fuel gossip while appearing genuine. There's one more thing, Hope said as they prepared to leave Elena's room. We need to send those medicine bottles to Denver tomorrow, but secretly. If Garrett discovers we have physical evidence, Miguel can take them. He has cousins in Denver, makes regular trips for supplies. Hope nodded, then hesitated. Cole, when this is over, when we've proved Garrett's guilt and secured the ranch, what then? Then we honor whatever agreement we make. Marriage in name, partnership in fact, for as long as it serves us both. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was honest. Hope told herself that was enough, that she hadn't expected romance when she proposed this practical solution. But as they left Elena's room and Cole locked the door behind them, Hope admitted what she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Somewhere between teaching children and sharing quiet dinners, between watching Cole's gentle patience with struggling students and his fierce loyalty to his people, she'd begun falling in love with him. The marriage might start as business arrangement, but Hope's heart was already invested in making it something more. She only hoped she could be patient enough to let love grow naturally without pushing Cole beyond what his wounded heart could accept. 5 days later, the charade began in earnest. Cole picked Hope up from morning lessons in his finest buggy, helped her down with obvious care, and escorted her to lunch at Silver Creek's most prominent restaurant. By evening, half the town was buzzing with speculation about the wealthy rancher and the beautiful school teacher. You're quite good at this, Hope murmured as they strolled past the general store, Cole's hand protectively on her elbow. At what? Playing the devoted suitor. If I didn't know better, I'd believe you were genuinely interested. Something flickered in Cole's expression. Would that be so difficult to believe? The question caught Hope off guard, sent warmth spiraling through her chest like whiskey on a cold night. Cole, Hope, there's something I need to tell you. This arrangement we've made, it's not as simple as I thought it would be. Before he could continue, hoofbeats thundered down Silver Creek's main street. Garrett arrived with his usual dramatic flair. But this time he wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him in an elegant carriage, sophisticated, beautiful, everything. Hope was not. Cole, Garrett called cheerfully, dismounting with practiced grace. Perfect timing. I brought someone special to meet you. The woman was stunning in the way of professional beauties, golden hair arranged in perfect ringlets, silk dress that cost more than most people earned in a year, porcelain skin that had never seen honest labor. Isabella Worthington, Garrett announced proudly, recently of Boston society, currently considering investment opportunities in our humble territory. Isabella Worthington looked like she'd stepped from a fashion magazine, elegant sophistication and cultured disdain for frontier roughness. She extended a gloved hand to Cole with practiced charm. Mr. Thornfield, she purred in accents that spoke of expensive finishing schools. Garrett has told me so much about your impressive accomplishments. Miss Worthington, Cole's voice was carefully neutral. Welcome to Montana territory. And you must be the little school teacher, Isabella said, turning to Hope with smiles sharp as winter wind. How quaint that you've dedicated yourself to educating the local children. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Hope felt her spine straighten automatically, detective instincts cataloging everything from Isabella's expensive jewelry to her calculating eyes. I find the work very rewarding, Hope replied smoothly. These children are remarkably intelligent and eager to learn. I'm sure they are. Isabella's gaze swept Silver Creek's modest buildings with obvious distaste. Garrett tells me you have made quite an impression on local society. The words carried layers of meaning that made Hope's professional paranoia flare to life. This wasn't coincidence. Isabella Worthington was here for specific reasons, and those reasons involved Hope personally. Miss Worthington has extensive experience in territorial law, Garrett added smoothly. Her late father was quite prominent in Boston legal circles. She might be able to offer advice about certain inheritance complexities. Hope felt the trap closing like steel jaws. Isabella Worthington was Garrett's nuclear option, a sophisticated woman who could provide Cole with the marriage and heirs he needed while being properly grateful for rescue from spinsterhood. How thoughtful, Hope managed, though Mr. Thornfield's legal situation has already been resolved. Oh, Isabella's perfect eyebrows rose in practiced surprise. Cole stepped closer to Hope, his hand finding hers with possessive certainty. Miss Delacroix has agreed to become my wife. We'll be married within the month. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Garrett's face cycled through shock, fury, and cold calculation. Isabella looked like she'd been slapped with a dead fish. How be it? Romantic, Isabella managed finally. Such a whirlwind courtship. Not so whirlwind, Cole replied with conviction that sounded dangerously real. Hope and I have grown quite close over the past months. Haven't we, darling? Hope's heart skipped at the endearment, even knowing it was performance. Very close. Cole has been wonderfully supportive of my work with the children. Indeed, Garrett's voice had shed all pretense of warmth. And when exactly did this understanding develop? Gradually, Cole set his arm sliding around Hope's waist in gesture that felt possessive and protective simultaneously. As the best relationships always do. Garrett's smile could have cut glass. Well, brother dear, you always did have a talent for the unexpected. Isabella, perhaps we should return to town. I'm sure Mr. Thornfield and his fiancée have wedding plans to discuss. They left in a swirl of dust and barely suppressed fury. Hope and Cole stood watching until the carriage disappeared around the bend, Cole's arms still warm around her waist. That wasn't coincidence, Hope said quietly. No, Garrett's getting desperate. Isabella Worthington was his ace in the hole, a woman who could provide me with heirs while being grateful enough to let him maintain influence over ranch decisions. And now we've forced his hand, he'll have to try more direct methods. Cole's expression hardened with determination Hope had never seen before. Let him come. We'll be ready. That night, as Hope lay in her comfortable bed listening to the ranch settle around her, she reflected on the strange turns her life had taken in just 5 short weeks. She'd arrived as a rejected mail-order bride with nowhere to go. Now she was an engaged woman planning to marry a man who might be falling in love with her if the warmth in his voice and the protective strength of his embrace meant anything real. But tomorrow would bring new challenges. Garrett wouldn't accept defeat gracefully, and men like him were most dangerous when cornered. The chemical analysis of Elena's medicine bottles wouldn't be complete for another week, and Hope's detective instincts warned her that Garrett wouldn't wait patiently for legal processes to unfold. Through the thin walls, she heard Cole's footsteps in the hallway. But tonight, instead of stopping at Elena's door, his steps paused outside Hope's room. Hope? His voice was barely audible through the wood. Are you awake? Yes. About what I was trying to say earlier before Garrett arrived. Hope's pulse quickened. What about it? Long pause, then this arrangement between us. It's becoming more complicated than I expected. Complicated house here and another pause longer this time. Good night, Hope. Sleep well. His footsteps retreated, leaving Hope staring at the ceiling with heart racing and mind spinning. What had he been trying to say? That the fake engagement was becoming real for him too. That the careful distance between them was dissolving into something warmer and more dangerous. Or was she simply reading Hope into words that meant nothing more than practical concern? Outside her window, autumn wind whispered through the grass, carrying promises of winter and the sweet possibility of spring beyond. In 7 days, she would marry Cole Thornfield in Silver Creek's small church. The marriage might start as business arrangement designed to thwart Garrett's schemes and secure justice for murdered innocents. But as Hope finally drifted towards sleep, she allowed herself to dream that their union might become something more precious than mere convenience. Something worth fighting for, worth risking everything to protect. Something like the love she was no longer able to deny growing in her heart, fragile and fierce as wildflowers blooming in mountain meadows, where winter should have made growth impossible. Tomorrow would bring new battles in their war against Garrett's greed and cruelty. But tonight, Hope dreamed of spring weddings and fairy tale endings of little girls who would never be forgotten, and new love growing from the ashes of old pain. Some stories she thought drowsily deserved happy endings. Maybe theirs would be one of them. Thank you for joining Hope and Cole on their journey from strangers to partners in this gripping Montana mystery romance. Their story reminds us that sometimes the strongest love grows not from passion alone, but from shared purpose, mutual respect, and the courage to seek justice together. Will they succeed in exposing Garrett's crimes and finding happiness together? Hit that like button if you enjoyed this tale of detective work and frontier love, and subscribe for more Western romance adventures. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have taken Hope's risks to uncover the truth? Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest mysteries and love stories from the Wild West.